Welcome to this Select Technology webinar titled Leveling Up, Take Your Office 365 Game to the Next Level. Thank you for joining us today. Your presenter today is Nick Ellis, our Digital Transformation Consultant, as you can see from the screen. My name is jmehta, I'm the Marketing Executive, and I will be Nick's second. I will now hand you over to Nick.
Thanks, Jig. Thank you everybody for joining. Today's session, as Jig was saying, is about leveling up, I called it, taking Office 365 to the next level. I did originally script a whole thing up, overworking that metaphor, but this is the last you're going to hear of it. What I'm actually going to do is going to work through a few tips and tricks that I have picked up over the years, and some that I've researched in the last few days, to be completely honest, that are just ways of making Office do a bit more for you. This is not going to be a slides driven thing. We have far too much of our life looking at slides, in my view, so this is all going to be product driven. So I'm going to put these slides away now and kind of crack straight into it. So let me just minimize everything. So here's my desktop. The first section we're going to be looking at is keeping in touch and how we communicate and keep in touch with each other. So obviously that's a key subject at the moment. We are having to learn all sorts of exciting new ways. There was a webinar last week specifically about Teams, and that video is available on YouTube, so I'm not going to go in enormous length into Teams. What I want to do instead is some of the things that Outlook can do for you that you may or may not already be taking advantage of. So I'm going to start my Outlook. While it's starting, I'm going to show you this. Now this will look very much like Outlook, but in fact it is not, or it is in fact the web version. So if you've got the new version of Microsoft Edge, or you've got Chrome, you can go to the Outlook web version and there'll be a little plus in the address bar, and you can pop that out into a app that you can store and keep and then access directly from your taskbar, as you can see here. I think it has some advantages. I prefer it to the native client for some uses, not for all. One of the things that I find quite handy about it is that the AI you can see up here, and some of these people, I suspect two of these people at the very least are actually on this session, people that I interact with a lot. The AI starts to suggest, hang on, that's someone you're talking to a lot, and we'll flag it up. So if I were to get an email from Nick Potter, Simon Moore, it would flag it up here for me. And I find it's a slightly more modern interface. So that's one thing to consider. However, if what you might think of as real Outlook. So this is my real Outlook, and it is my real Outlook. So I've sort of checked and made sure there's nothing too controversial on here, but the view will be very familiar to you. Calendar. Now this is from a demo tenant. So this is obviously your usual calendar view: day, work, day, week. You can view it in all sorts of different ways. One of the things that is quite useful is the drag and drop feature. People don't use a lot. I don't see people using a lot, but you can drag things around a lot in Outlook. So let's say this email from Cal from Sounder. If I wanted to turn that into a meeting, I can drag the email, drop it onto the calendar, and turn it on another screen, but it will then create a meeting. It'll start to work out times for me. What it hasn't done is the attendees, because it doesn't know that I necessarily want to invite Cal, but I can do all the usual stuff there. So drag and drop is very good. It will also, if I do drag and drop it onto contacts, it will try and create a contact from that individual, and it will put the email that I've used in the notes to remind me why I've done that. So I firmly recommend drag and drop. We're going to get more sophisticated in a minute, I promise. If you've not switched on focused inbox, I recommend doing that as well. There is a setting for your IT admins to enable focused inbox. What it does is it works out, again, based on who the email is from, who the email is to, and the contents within that email. So if you're in CC and it's low value, or it's from someone that we don't recognise and what have you, it'll bung it into the other box. So as you can see here, I've got 588 unread emails, which I think might cause some people to have a mild breakdown at the thought of 588 unread emails. But actually, the vast majority, although there's a few of them here, you can see the vast majority of those are in the other box. They're just things that are not particularly interesting. So, you know, pasta evangelists, if you're very excited. I quite like a bit of pasta, as you can see, but it has identified, well, that's a marketing email. It's not junk, but we're just going to put it over here in a box for you. So yes, have a chat with your IT admins if you haven't already got the focused inbox. Quick steps. Quick steps is another area about how can we just make doing this a lot simpler. You'll notice things like it, out of the box up here in the home ribbon at the top, you've got these quick steps, and there are some default ones. So team email, it will ask you to define what do you mean by team the first time, but you can just say, I'm just going to forward this to my team. This one has been created automatically by virtue of the fact that I've got a folder here somewhere there called tickets. So it's kind of worked out, okay, well, that's, you might want to push that straight into the tickets folder. There are other ones that are default, so to manager. So if I press that again, the first time you use it, it will ask you to define, okay, who is your manager. But you can also, as you can see, create your own quick steps here. So you can just have one button at the top. Effectively, you're designing your own little processes, much like the other buttons in the ribbon. So quick step, you go to custom, and then you can start to choose, okay, well, what am I going to want to do? Set retention policies, automatically forward it, reply to it, reply as a meeting, forward the message to somebody else as an attachment. All these things that you can do, you can predefine and just have up there as a button. So if you've got something that you have to do fairly regularly, that's a bit time consuming, you can define it once here, have a button and go, yeah, this email, do that to it. So have a good look around the quick steps area. Another common piece of communication that we all have to do, is sharing our notes with each other. Now I've got this note here. This has got various bits of information in it. I'm going to just create a new page and call it test notes. You might have noticed there was logon and password information there. That's fine, doesn't matter, because it's a demo tenant that actually has expired now, so that's why that was okay. So I'm going to create some test notes. If you're not familiar with OneNote, you know, there's all sorts of things you can do in here. You can drag and drop pictures. You can, so I can grab this, drop a picture in there. There's a reason for this picture, which we'll come on to in a minute. You can drop whole files in, and then you get choices and all that. So this isn't a OneNote section, but one of the things that we can do with our notes is share them out. There's a share button up at the top, and you get choices about who you're going to share it with, who you're going to give permissions to. So if you're in a meeting or you're on a phone call and you're taking notes, and then someone says, oh, can you send me the notes for that? You don't have to copy and paste it into the email. You don't have to do anything particularly sophisticated. You just hit the share button, choose who you want to share it with, or you can go send copy of page, and it will start to look for contact information from the Contacts app in Windows 10. So you can just send a message here. So I can say I want to send this to Jig. If I want, I can add some message text. This is a picture of Prometheus. Pay attention later, you'll see him again. And then I can hit send, and it compiles all the email for me and sends it straight out. Outlook we all spend a lot of time in, so I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about Outlook. This is broadly the end of the Outlook bit, but there is one area that I want to draw your attention to. There's a button up here that every time I've pointed it out to people, they go, oh, I didn't know that. So I just want to talk about this. This is the Insights button. Insights, I think, is very cool, but then I'm an Office 365 nerd. What Insights is doing all the time, it's not a will do when you press the button, it's always doing it, is it's looking at the content of your emails. It's doing that now. It's not doing it in a sinister way. It's not like companies that are processing your data to sell it on. You're the customer, you're paying. So it's doing it for your benefit. And it's processing and working out what you need to be focused on in your email activity. So you can see here, it's come up with, I've hit Insights up here, and it has come up with various suggestions. Now, to get to it, I'm going to do it again. To get to it, you have to select an email. If I just, I now can't deselect the email, but when you first come to Outlook, it hasn't got an email selected. You have to select an email, this button becomes available, and then it will chunk away. Now, it will give you these various options. So catch up on documents. If I click on that, it's going to say, okay, look, here's a document that's attached that you haven't read. So it's identified that Jig is someone that I have a lot of meetings with. I have a lot of email exchanges with. So do I want to mark Jig as important? I probably do. The prepare for your meetings is quite a powerful function as well. So it's going to say, okay, you've got this meeting here. Here's this webinar that we're in right now, except this is next Tuesday's but run of it. So there's only myself and Jig invited because your attendance is done by a slightly different mechanism, as you know. It's going to say, have we written an agenda for it? Are there any attachments for it? Well, no, not yet. Have we got an online meeting link set up for it? And it's going to give me these options here. So I'm probably going to need, and you know what, I'm going to do that. I'm going to say I'm going to want 30 minutes of prep time before. And it's going to book that straight into my calendar, and it's going to tell me there 30 minutes booked. So that's going through all of the meetings. It's then got things like outstanding tasks. Now, tasks is actually based on language analysis. You can see here this sentence, Jig, if you can't make it, don't worry, I'll facilitate and update you next week. So because it's found that phrase, I will facilitate you and update you next week, so that's a task. That's a thing you've committed to do for somebody. That's a joke between me and my wife at the bottom of that. So it's analysing the language in the emails. It's not just the stuff that you say is a task, it's actually analysing the language for you. And then email open rate. So here is an email that I sent to multiple people. In fact, I know for a fact I sent it to 3 people and only 2 of them have opened it. Now, given that 2 of them have actually replied to me, I know who the other one is, and I could choose to go and chase up on that. And then follow up on your requests. So again, this is doing language analysis. Would you like to? Can I suggest that? Can we go through? This is stuff that I've asked for, questions that I've asked people in emails going out, that it's saying you haven't had an answer to this, you haven't resolved this, it's still there. It's a really powerful piece of software, I think, and it's completely embedded into Outlook. You can access it from there. In the web version, it's slightly different. You can select the email and then you've got 3 dots and you go Insights. You get the same thing, it's just a slightly different route to finding it. You'll notice, by the way, I use the dark background. That's because I'm a little bit light sensitive. It gives me a headache after a while. So I have everything set on dark background. I deliberately put the web version on the light background for today, but you can switch that around so you can make your working life much easier by configuring how everything looks for you. Now, thinking about insights, I'm just going to go slightly off of the messaging subject and go to a thing called My Analytics. Now, if you've never seen this screen, then you really should. Go to portal.office.com, portal.office.com, log in with your usual Microsoft details, and you will be taken to this screen. And here you can see all of the applications that are available to you. And one of them is a thing called My Analytics. My Analytics is maybe not one that you want to look at every day, but it's certainly worth checking in from time to time. This is real data about my life or my working life and how I work. So you get this overview at the top, and then you can explore down into what it's talking about. So, for example, focus. Do you have enough uninterrupted time? And click through there, and it's starting to tell me, have I got any days with focus time booked? And what that means is this plan configuration. I can actually say that I want the software to book out my time. If we go back to Outlook and we go into the calendar, we go to next week, we're in day view, that's why that's not doing it. Sorry, we go to next week, we will see that there's what's called, it's marked out this focus time. It said, okay, that is time that we're going to hold back. And then we can also see that there are conflicts in there, and the software is starting to look at that. So you can tell it, pre-book me some time to focus on things. And then if you don't actually manage to do that, it's keeping an eye on that. So it's telling me, actually this week you haven't really managed to do your focus time. You've been in other things, you've been doing meetings, so you haven't been focused enough to get stuff done. And it will start to offer you suggestions about how to manage that better. They're a bit pat. They're not necessarily the most brilliant insights, and they're certainly not enormously personal, but it's useful information. You can see here I was much more focused there, and the focus is declining. I mean, if you can think of something that happened in the middle of March that started to suddenly cause me to be in a lot more meetings and were video conferences, then that might be why. In terms of well-being, this is how much time am I spending outside. So my working hours are 9 till 5:30 Monday to Friday as far as office is concerned, and this is telling me, well, actually only the days in purple are the ones where I actually completely managed to respect that. So it's not going to accept today because I was already working at 7:30 this morning. It's not going to accept yesterday because I was working on something at 9 o'clock last night. So you can see here, and again, you can start to, if you were to look at February, you'd see it was a bit clearer. And obviously we know the reasons why it's all gone a bit out of the window in March. It will also start to break it down. So 58% of my non-quiet time is spent in emails, 25% in meetings. I'm actually going to meetings at the weekend and things like that, and chats and calls, so in Teams, and then your network and your collaboration. So have a look around this and see. It scores the quality of your meetings, by the way. So I apparently only attend 50% of the meetings I was invited to. I'm not entirely sure how it's measuring that. So have a good look around in there, because there's lots of tips about how to look after your well-being a bit more. The one thing I'm going to say about Teams, we are in Teams already, so I'm going to have to use the web client. Is booking your meetings in a team channel rather than individually creating them every time. The reason that I say that is because it gives you a lot of extra functionality that's not really available in a standard team. So, in a standard meeting rather. So if I go to the Teams section here, I've got this thing called Leave Planner. Now, if I schedule my meeting to happen in that channel, Let's find an empty week. That'll do. If I book a meeting there, I can actually say that the meeting is going to happen in the channel, wherever it was, leave planner, there, stick that in that channel. Now when I create that, by doing it from Teams, it's going to automatically create a notebook, it's going to automatically create a chat that you'll be familiar with, and it's going to create a file store for any attachments that I choose to send, so that the meeting effectively becomes a team, a sort of temporary team in its own right, and gives you a lot of extra functionality. When you're scheduling meetings, both in Outlook and in Teams, it's worth looking at the scheduling assistant. Oh, why isn't finding you, Jig? I'm in the wrong box, that's why. Sorry. That's better. You see, if there's another tip. If you're going to type things, type them in the right box. So I'm going to say I need an hour and a half with these people. The scheduling assistant, very quick, will just tell you exactly when people are available. So just go, okay, there you go, there's an hour and a half when they're available. Got the same function in Outlook as well. So again, a couple of people recently that I've spoken to have said that they were unaware of that functionality. So my advice going forwards from now, whenever you're scheduling a meeting, try and schedule it in Teams. You'll get your notebook, you'll get your chat window, you get your file store. So it's a more complete offering than the Outlook one. Right, let's get into some slightly harder stuff. Excel. We all love Excel, don't we? Everybody loves a spreadsheet. So where's my spreadsheet? There it is. Here we have a spreadsheet full of data. This is sample data, doesn't mean anything else. In fact, it's provided by Microsoft, downloaded it from their website. We've got, what have we got here? 700 rows of data of simulated sales data. There are all sorts of ways you can summarize this, and as you can see, it's in a table. Once it's in a table, this button becomes available. Ideas. The ideas function essentially will do a good percentage of your thinking for you. So if you hit the ideas, it'll have a quick think about the data. You can see there, it's analysing the data, it's working out what are the connections, and then it'll start to say, well, hang on, have a look at this. So it will identify useful information. It will identify patterns that are really difficult for you to see when you're looking at this, but that it can find very, very quickly. And it will offer you ways of visualizing that. Now you can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Down here we've actually got a link that says show all 35. So it's actually found 35 different ways. Not all of them are going to be helpful. So sometimes it's going to present something, you go, okay, what's, you know, how does that help me? Some of them, on the other hand, you know, so it's spotted a very clear trend there, that might be useful. Whereas some of them you can very quickly get from the visual, that probably just because from the shape of the chart isn't terribly useful. Whereas this grouping perhaps is, but it's found the major correlations right there. So we say, okay, government and small business have noticeably higher sale price. As for why that is, you know, and it will find outliers to trends like this. So it's identified there that they're not fitting with the trend. Any of these, you can see here, insert pivot chart. All you've got to do is press the plus, and it will go away and generate that for you on another page in the in another sheet rather in the spreadsheet. Some of them are pivot charts. Lots of these are pivot charts, in fact, but they're not all. So that's just a standard chart. If it's a standard chart, it'll locate it in the same area as you can see there. Then once you've got the chart, you've got all the usual functionality. You can modify the data. You can do what you want with it. It's just a really effective way of quickly identifying the areas that might be interesting to you. Up here, you've got this section that says which fields interest you the most. So you kind of should go into there and go, actually, you know what? I don't really care about that and that and that. Oh, and also units sold. I'm more interested in the average. Update that. And it won't take away the ones it's already created, but it will start to give you more information based on what you've selected there. Now, do we know about the summarization bar at the bottom? Most people are sort of familiar with it, that if you select a set, that's going to sum that up. If you right click that, there are actually all sorts of different functions. It's this section we're interested in here. So I could choose to have all of those on if I wanted to, and then any range of information I select is going to say, okay, well, the average is that, the count, the numerical count is to do with where you've got merged cells, so it's generally is going to give you the same answer. It's going to tell you the minimum, the maximum, the sum, the average. It's just a very quick way of getting to sort of key information. But you'll see in there, if you right click over that, there is a lot of other functionality, so you can get into controls and all sorts of advanced stuff, macro recording, if you're really into that. There is a lot of additional functionality available around Excel, and if you can't find the thing you're looking for in any Office application, right click up here, hit customize the ribbon, and everything it will possibly do for you, every button that has been designed for it will be available up here, and you can just drag them and drop them into the right area of the menus. So if you want to, you can start to build custom areas, so the buttons that you use most frequently you can put on the home. So I might say customize the ribbon, and then I'm going to say, actually I'm going to have within the home tab, I'm going to create a new group, call it next group, and I might say that the things I really use a lot are open and save, and I for some reason use the subscript button a lot, and I'm always asking for pivot tables. So those things that I need to access most frequently, I can just design a little group and put them up there so I know where they are. I don't have to keep clicking around into different tabs on the ribbon. Wildcard search is a key thing, so you're probably familiar with, if you do Control F, you can search for, so we've got Paseo in there, I can search for Paseo and it will find it like that. However, you can do wildcard searching in Excel as well. So if you're not sure exactly how it's spelt, the wavy line, technically called a tilde, is the wildcard in Excel. So you can see that's going to find it as well. So if you're not quite sure what's in the field, wildcard searching using the wavy line and the tilde. Now, goal seek. I'm just going to draw your attention to the data tab. So in here, I've got a very simple formula that tells me I've got 5,000 units that cost me $4.99. I'm marking them up by 25%. Therefore, you're probably going to round that a bit, and then it can tell me my profit per unit and then the overall profit. If you want to see exactly how that's working, as it says here, control and accent, acute accent, so that's control and the key underneath escape on your keyboard. Actually, we'll switch the view to show you the formulas in there. So that's a number, that's a number, that's a number, but then these three are formulas. So this is essentially just defining the 25%, and then C4 times 25% of C4. The profit is that minus the cost, and then so you can see how the formulas work. And as I say, the switching backwards and forwards, very easy if you want to just have a quick look at what your formulas are doing. Now, the thing that I wanted to draw your attention to here is a function that I use all the time, and it saves me a lot of time, and that is goal seek. If you're not familiar with goal seek, you can come to the data tab, what if, goal seek. Then we're going to say, actually, I'd like G4 to be £10,000. I want £10,000 of profit out of this. Fine. So what am I going to change? Well, I could change anything that's a number. I can't change it in the formulas, but anything that's a number. So I could say, do you know what? I want £10,000, and I'm going to do that by just increasing my markup, and it will work out what the markup needs to be in order for me to make £10,000 out of that. I can OK that, and it will accept it, or I can cancel it, and it will reset it back. Equally, goal seek, I might say, okay, well, if I want £10,000. Maybe the answer is to sell more units. So how many units do I have to sell? So I have to sell 8,080 units in order to make £10,000 of profit. Or a slightly more complicated one, but if I could renegotiate with my suppliers and I wanted £10,000 of profit by changing the cost, what would the cost need to be? Well, weirdly, that has the effect of driving the cost up. So you always have to be slightly careful with these things because that's an unexpected outcome. What you'd have to do into there is build in your sale price as a fixed number and say, okay, well, if my sale price is this, what would my cost be in order for me to make £10,000 of profit? So you have to think about it a little bit, but it's a very neat tool for if you're working through scenarios and trying to understand what different things would look like. There are others in there that I would recommend having a look at, Scenario Manager and so on, but I find the goal seek really useful. I used it recently putting together a business case where we needed to understand cost of time spent and what the fully loaded cost of that time was, and all that kind of stuff. And goal seek was a really powerful tool in helping me to do that. A couple of other things on this tab that are worth talking about. Remove duplicates is very good. So if I come back to this slide, and I don't know whether there are any duplicates in it, but you can specify remove duplicates so that you only end up with one, but you say, okay, I'm going to unselect all, but I only want one for each country, and then if I run that, that will strip out everything, so I end up exactly with only one. But I might say, well, one with each country for exactly the same number of units, or for exactly the same gross sales, or one for each country on the same in a given month, for example. So if I do that, you'll see it's removed 620 duplicates. So we had what, 700 and something. We're now down to 81 by stripping out duplicate information. That's not the best use case, that specific scenario, but if you've got spreadsheets and you think you've got duplicates in there, the remove duplicates function is a much easier way than getting some poor administrator to sit there and go through and try and work it out. So yes, that's the data section. You've got lots of tabs at the top, obviously. Many of them are very straightforward. The formulas tab has got advice on all of the formulas that you might want to use. All grouped up here, so you can see, and you can pick any cell and go insert function, and there's a function builder. So the function builder is really good. So if I'm going to say, well, what I want to do is look up, and then it will say, okay, well, these are all the various ways of looking up data. And when you go, I want it to be a VLOOKUP, it'll give you a little dialogue, and it'll do that for any function. So if you're not sure, you're not really comfortable building functions just by writing the text straight into the formula bar, this insert function button is a really helpful way of helping you through that process. So we've talked about ideas, we've talked about the what if analysis, we've talked about the function button, insert function, and the kind of reference guides here for all of the functions that you might want to use. So moving on from Excel, I don't know if there's any questions occurring, but moving on from Excel, I'm going to have a look now at PowerPoint. Now in PowerPoint, there's a new button that has come about in the last 6 months, I think. There are two new buttons that have come about in the last 6 months. One is Design Ideas, and the other is Morph. Those of us of a certain age will associate the word morph with a small yellow animated man. Those of you who are too young for that will think I've gone mad. So what I've got here is a very simple little PowerPoint deck. It's got a picture of the Milky Way, and then it hasn't actually rendered very well on the left here, but you can see here we've got a map of various places in the visible sky. Now this is not, as you can see, a great opening slide. It's a bit boring. Again, we've got a design ideas, so it's like the ideas function. It's got the lightning bolt. Design ideas will suggest various ways of making it a bit funkier. It's going to use the colors that are in the image to derive different ways. Now they are a bit, you have to make your own judgments about the how cheesy they are, but if you're just trying to put something together very quickly, it's quite an effective tool. The thing is, as you add more things to the page, it will start to adapt that very quickly. Excuse me, I hit the wrong button. So having done that, you can see now it's starting to adapt it and think, okay, well, we've got additional content that we need to design in. And then if I say, well, actually, I'm also going to want a rectangle, again, that is now going to say, well, what do you want to do with that? It's not going to do a great deal with that. But if I were to put another picture in, let's put Prometheus back in, pictures. I'll put him in as well, then it will start, and this is where it starts to add real value, that it's doing a lot of the layout and the shaping for you. That's quite a neat one for the Milky Way. Not sure if it's done that intentionally, but it's always good to give it a try just to see what it's going to come up with. So that's the design ideas function. Morph. I want to tell you about morph. I love the morph function. Jig has seen many of my morph based presentations. In the old days, by which I mean December, because morph only came out in January, if you wanted to do fancy animations and stuff, you'd click on your object, you'd come to animations, and you'd have to start defining that. Now it's all still there. If you're comfortable working with that, it's all still there. However, what morph does is it allows you to simply say, this is the start, and the next slide is the end, and the transition will work it out. So what we have here is an arrow pointing at Arcturus, an arrow pointing at Parvo, an arrow facing the other way pointing at Sirius, and an arrow again pointing a different way and a different colour pointing at Altair. And then on the last slide, a bit of a zoom in to focus on Canis Major. Now if I run the deck, I just quickly go up here, go to the transitions, make sure they're all on a morph transition, and then when I run the deck for you, you'll see. So that's the first transition. That's fairly standard. We're familiar with that. But that, I have not defined that. I've simply said start here, end there, and it works it out for itself. And even that, which is quite a sophisticated arc where it's turning it around, again, I've just said this is the start, that's the end. This is the start, that's the end. And then there's the focus in, because we're particularly interested in this section here in Canis Major and the surrounding objects. Again, it's going to say, well, I can see that that is a related section of the same the same image, so it will automatically generate that animation for you. It's very simple to do. As I say, just define your start and end points and hit morph. And I have found it has probably reduced my time preparing animated slide decks by about 80%, because I don't have to worry now about how to get there. I just say that's where I need to end up. One other thing to quickly mention in PowerPoint, if I'm just going to pull this over to one side, is the dictate function. Now this exists in PowerPoint and in Word, obviously, and if I now hit the dictate button, fingers crossed, Canis Major is it's not doing it. There you go. Star system in the Milky Way. As you can see, I was impatient there, and I immediately went to it's not doing it, but in fact it was. It just takes a couple of seconds to load it through. So if you want to dictate the content, you have to speak very clearly. You have to speak directly into the microphone. I am blessed with a kind of podcasting microphone rig here, so sound quality obviously is a factor, but it's a useful little tool if you're typing a lot, or for accessibility for people with difficulty using conventional keyboards. So that's PowerPoint. Now Word, there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about in Word. Again, this is about adding a bit of sparkle to the occasion. I've got a few files here, and here is Prometheus. Mary Shelley, Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus. Not going to go into great lengths. This I downloaded as a simple notepad file, which it was just plain text. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gutenberg project. Any out of copyright, but about 50,000 books, out of copyright books. If you ever feel like reading them, you can just go and download them as a plain text, like a notepad file. That's what I did here, and it took me about 10 minutes to get that plain notepad file to a properly laid out, as you can see, book with headings and what have you, images on the front. One of the key tools for doing that, and it surprises me how often I see people manually styling every heading and what have you. Make sure you're using your styles. So it's really important. And a good tip, it won't do this by default. If you right click on any of the styles and then go modify and go to the paragraph section, with your headers, you can get into various things. So you can look at your line and page breaks, and this one here, page break before, is particularly key for heading 1. So that's what I've set. Rather than going through and go, oh, I've got a page break here, I've got a page break here, I can just say to it, every time you see heading 1, bang a page break in. And then all I really had to do was scroll down, select go. I also came with a plain text contents page. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the contents page, but once you've defined your styles and you put the styles in the right place, it is the matter of going to here and going, right, bung a table of contents in, but you do have to have your styles defined to make that work. Pictures and text and what have you, again, I'm sure you're very familiar with. The interesting function rather here is in the review area. So right now at the moment, check document, that will do various things. So it's gone through and said, okay, well, I can find 169 spelling issues that I'm concerned with. A lot of them are a consequence of the fact that this is a very old text, so some of the language and the things have changed. So you can go through and check all that very easily in one click. You can also, with any word, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's take let's take the word sailors, because it's there. A right click and a smart lookup on the word is going to give me various things. So it's going to look it up on the web. It's going to find me the Wikipedia definition of what a sailor is. It might find me some pictures of sailors, any files. So it's going to have a look around and find any other files that have got that word in. Now there aren't any other files that have got that word in. So if I do let's see if I can find one that does. But you get the general idea. So it will also give you pronunciation guides.
Accustomed.
And suggest present and past tense.
Accustomed.
And so on. And you can also get into things like synonyms. So you can say, actually, I don't want it to be accustomed, I want it to be habituated, because I know better about word choice than Mary Shelley, apparently. And you also have this rewrite section. So this here, that's quite a complicated sentence, I think. Heaven shower down blessings on you and save me, that I may again and again testify my gratitude for all your love and kindness. Quite a complicated sentence, you know, in a novel written by the wife of a poet 170 years ago. So it comes and goes. That full sentence actually isn't going to offer a rewrite for. It's going to suggest alternative phrases. The phrase was probably too long when I selected the whole sentence, but it's going to suggest alternatives for you if you've got phrases that just look clunky and what have you. It's not always going to succeed, as you can see. This is new functionality that's only become available in very, very recently, and it's evolving. If you use Microsoft Edge, it's also embedded into that. So if you're doing anything on the Microsoft Edge browser, you get the same kind of set of functionalities. Another area, and far be it from me to suggest that you would be looking at this, but here's my CV. Now, I'm sure you're all very, very happy. But let's say this is actually a slightly out of date CV because it doesn't even mention select technology. But there is in here a CV assistant, which I can't try and remember where that is. There's a CV assistant. If you connect with LinkedIn in Word, the first thing it'll do is it'll say, okay, so what role are we applying for in this CV? And then it will find you from LinkedIn other examples of people who have a CV for the same area. And it includes geography because it knows from your LinkedIn account where you are and so on. It will start to suggest key skills that are going to be useful in that CV document, articles on how to write CVs and so on. Language refinement, so you can tell it this is a CV and that has a particular style to it, so use that style rather than the more general prose. And actually at the bottom of this, it's even going to bring in some job adverts that it thinks will fit based on the descriptions that you've put. So and you can get into LinkedIn to start doing more stuff directly from there, because if you're aware, LinkedIn is a Microsoft company. So there's a lot of functionality there. It probably would have been good to spell that right before I use this. So broadly speaking, it's just gone 10-2. I'm going to go back through all the various things quickly. So in communication, use the insights. Really good way of controlling your time. Find the insights tab. Hit that, look at what it's suggesting you need to get on top of it. You don't have to be a slave to it, but it's good suggestions. Book your meetings using Teams rather than Outlook because it gives you a lot of additional functionality. Use My Analytics to understand where your days are going off track. Drag and drop around in Outlook rather than manually creating everything. Use the focused inbox to get rid of the stuff that is wasting your time. And when you're in meetings or whatever it is you're doing and you're in OneNote, hit the share button rather than going off and separately emailing people. In Excel, customize your ribbon. The things that you do all the time, customize your ribbon. Up to the top, right click, customize ribbon, and find the things you want. Use the summary bar, set the values that you're going to want most often, the sum, average, count, etc., maximum, minimum. Remember to use wildcard searching, and the tilde, the wavy line, is the wildcard character, and then use ideas to generate your charts and your useful information that your directors are likely to be looking for, and then use goal seek to find out what is the question that you need to ask. So if you're working out a scenario, you're trying to understand what a scenario could look like, goal seek is the function that you're after. When you're adding a little sparkle, PowerPoint, use the design ideas to get suggestions on how to make the slides more accessible, more readable. Use the dictate function if you've got a lot of text. It does work exactly the same in Word. I didn't show it, but it is there. You can see it up here in this button. And use the morph function to avoid having to spend hours trying to prepare animations if you're looking to do an animated slide deck. And then lastly, in Word, use the check document to quickly access all of your spelling issues and your language. Use rewrite to suggest sharper ways of saying the same thing. Use the CV assistant to produce your CV if you need to. I would also say CV assistant is quite handy for people in HR and recruitment, because it kind of will bring that same layer of intelligence to the occasion, and it will show you who else is out there. And also your styles and your references and your tables. Always use styles rather than manually configuring what the font is going to look like, because it's so much easier. You just do it once and then just apply, and then it also, once you've got your styles, makes it the matter of seconds to create a content table. And that is everything I had prepared, and some other bits that I didn't have prepared but I threw in anyway. Are there any questions, Jig?
Yes, there's a couple of questions. So how does the Office 365 interact with Mac? What's the experience like?
That's a very interesting question. So I am a Mac user when I'm not at work, and I've previously been a Mac user when I am at work. So this stuff here, this is all web-based, so of course it works exactly the same on a Mac as it works everywhere else. There is now a Microsoft Edge. This is the Microsoft Edge browser. You can see that plus that I was talking about earlier for the Outlook. I can actually I can do that here as well and create an app. The downloaded software for Mac is pretty much the same. There are some slight variances, but there's not been anything that we've talked about in this that I don't think you could do on Mac. It might look a bit different. Some of the layout is a bit different, but fundamentally all of the functionality is there. I've never found myself on a Mac going, oh, apparently I can't do that. I have sometimes gone, oh, I have to go here rather than there to do it.
Excellent. And the last question is to do with My Analytics.
Yes.
So how is it essentially tracking if you're in what meetings you're in? So it says you're spending this much time in meetings. Does it know? Is it using the calendar to define what a meeting is?
So it's using a calendar, but it's also, if it's a Teams meeting, it knows whether you turned up, of course, because if you don't dial in Teams into the meeting, if you don't press the join button, then it's taking that into account. You'll see here you've got focus, but you've got collaborations. So all of this time right now, this is going to be unable to focus because I'm in a meeting. But if I were to, as we actually often do, we hang up at the end of this and then I call Jig using Teams, it's going to put that in the collaboration section because that's just a one-to-one call. Microsoft are a little bit cagey about how these algorithms work. Obviously it's their intellectual property. They don't tell you exactly, but it will also spot things like, so if you're, even if it's not a Teams meeting, if it's an in-person meeting, remember those? They used to happen once, in-person meetings.
I know, weird.
Back in the dark days. If you're in an in-person meeting and you run a PowerPoint presentation, it will both establish that you have turned up to the meeting, and at the end it will go, you just ran this PowerPoint presentation whilst in this meeting. Would you like me to send the slides to everybody that was else that was at that meeting? So it is always analysing and based on all sorts of behaviours, even. I believe, don't quote me on this one, but I believe the fact that you stop doing anything else for an hour, which corresponds to a meeting that you're tied to it will go, aha, there you go, you're doing something that I've established. Now, it might be wrong. It might be that you forgot that meeting and went for lunch. You know, but it will sort of analyse quite a lot of data to get to that position.
And I'm guessing that'll be pretty much the same for knowing how much time you're spending on emails. It'll know when you're typing and X, Y.
That's right. It knows when you're typing. It knows. So right now, at the moment, Edge has got the focus on so the operating system knows which software is the one I'm working with, of course, in order to show it to me. But as I switch around, so now it knows I'm in Outlook. Office 365 is obviously connected to my Windows account, so it's tracking that as well. You were looking at Outlook, even if you weren't typing. Outlook is what you had on in focus. Again, I can put it in focus and then walk away for half an hour. It's not clever enough yet to work that out. But,
yes, it doesn't use your camera to watch you and work out what you're doing.
Not to my knowledge, and I think if they were doing that and hadn't told us, that would be quite a controversial thing.
That would be a very scary moment in our lives. But I'm guessing also, the final question that came with that was that it can track you across multiple devices.
Yes, it can. So I've got a Surface, which is my own laptop. I've got Teams, Outlook and SharePoint installed on my mobile device. And as I mentioned, I've also got a Mac. It doesn't matter which of those I'm doing it with. If I'm doing something in Teams, it's going, aha, you're collaborating. If I'm sending emails, it's going to treat that as email sending time wherever it comes from. Yeah, it's not concerned. Or through the web interface as well. It doesn't matter. So even if it's not one of your devices, if you're doing it on the web interface, that's it. You're doing it. It knows. Yeah. No, you can view that as sinister, or you can view it as helpful.
Well,
and I leave that to others. But
well, to be fair, we are being all watched on every website we go to anyway. So
pretty much.
So it's the same principle to do with websites.
And there is, I think, there is a key principle, which is that if you're not paying for it, you're not the customer. So, with Facebook, you're putting the information in and they are using it and they are monetizing it for their benefit. Here, you're paying for it because it's Office 365, unless you're using the academic licenses. So you are the customer, you're in control. You can turn on and off all the functionality. It's all in the admin panel, and you can turn on and off exactly how much of the data gets crunched.